It's okay. You have to stand now.
You do you.
We know, we know.
Does it matter what it says?
No, just as long as you don't touch the budget committee stuff.
That includes the candy.
Patrick, nice to meet you. Cheers.
Julie is trying to fix the computer. But in the interest of time, because we do have to get out of here for the budget committee to meet, I want to get us started. Thank you all for coming. Our agenda today, I think, so I will call this meeting to order, being the sort of de facto staff person. And the first thing I would love to do is elect a chairman for our group. When we were reformed by the select board, we sort of started as a new group. Open the floor for nominations for a chairperson.
Michael, if you're interested, I'd love to see you steering this next outreach campaign. And my preference to nominate you.
Okay, I'll accept that.
So we have one nomination for Michael.
I'll second.
Second too.
Sounds good to me.
Our next order of business. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over the Trails grant that was on our agenda. The Trails grant will be opening in the next month. So I think we can talk about it next month, but just wanted to put it in your brains that the land water conservation.
I just gotta figure out the audio.
Okay.
Well,
Land water conservation is reopening the main. We applied for putting trails in the park. Last time we did not get that grant. It was because we were given $500,000 for putting in tennis courts. So they didn't award us that round. So be thinking about, do we want to apply for this next round? And if so, are there any adjustments or changes you want to make to the grant as it was submitted?
Was that the grant that, one of the people in the state said, if you go to this modification, that chances that was probably flat, or do I have that? It's like something
They
else.
didn't really give us any feedback except that they had given us
Okay.
money to the tennis courts.
I just wanted to see that.
I'll reshare the application.
There will be some things I think we can protect in the application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could you provide information on the possibility of receiving that in the context of not receiving it last year, not only for the reason we didn't receive it, but maybe for other reasons that you're more aware of in terms of how the process works? And also if there's any other, opportunities for trail development that we should be thinking about grant wise.
Um, I will be sharing the application, along with other possibilities. There is a review session that I signed up for the sale, because we need it this week. So I can send out that as well to the people that live in.
That's highly, highly informative.
News, so the application is open this month, but they're doing June, is that right? That's what we had in the previous.
My understanding is that it would either be the June. We've got some time. Yeah, which is why I'm not, rushed to.
Okay.
But do you want to put it on your radar, so you can start thinking about how we might, refine that. Okay, so, I'm going to switch these on myself, but, before we think about creating a public engagement or outreach plan, for this information, I wanted to spend the bulk of the time today, digesting the ideas that Cindy provided for us. Barbara and Susan were unable to join us today, so I printed out their responses, just so we have them. I wasn't sure if people had gotten those or if they had just been sent to me, so I wanted to send them out to everybody.
Someone needs, well, why are we doing blind ones? I mean, I would have liked to have time to read this, but
Because we can't have a group conversation over email, and so a blank carbon copy prevents that from happening. But you make a separate point, which is to say, if something is set out, supposed to be sent out to everyone, we should make sure it gets to everyone. I only received Barbara's
Right.
and not Susan's, so those are two
You know what I
different
mean?
points. But it would just be up, I guess, for you to write back to the person to say, who did you include? That's the only way to do it.
thing is, every other committee I've been on, this is blind copies. Quite frankly,
I know, it's a legal
You
question.
shouldn't be,
Well-
you shouldn't be,
I'm just saying that-
you shouldn't be not using them.
If she had blind CC Susan, couldn't be. I mean, why did we get Barbara?
If she had blind CC'd everybody,
And we could have gone.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
we would have got.
I think Susan
Right.
just sent them to me. I'm also not on the committee, so you could just copy me so that I could see who was CC'd. You wouldn't necessarily have to be with me. You can include me in the subject line, and I should be able to see who's on the email and maybe able to see who would listen to that.
Because what I'm thinking is, not everybody's well versed in that. And because of that, information doesn't get delivered to everybody. And you're kind of,
so in the future,
it's,
when you get something, send it out to everybody BCC, and then you guys just can't
It's-
discuss it.
and that's fine. At least we have the information.
Yeah.
Well, and that goes for anybody,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Just so we're consistent.
And we're, I mean, this, for us, I think we're gonna spend a couple meetings digesting this information and really deciding what to do with it, so this is for you, it's not necessarily a need to respond to what Barbara or Susan said today, it's more let's hear what everybody's thoughts were and discuss them in this space. And then the next time we can dig in to what everybody's, we can dig in more.
That's the reason I didn't write anything, because I didn't back in the who received it, who wouldn't, well, we pull you.
So, I sent you a list of questions for our discussion for today. Let's.
It's actually harder for me to answer than you might guess, because I look at these design plans as more of a heuristic, not a feasible or constructible plan, but suite of ideas. So I was more in mind just looking at cool features that I haven't seen in a park. I would like to see it. I'm particularly interested in earth mount structures, which I've seen in the south in parks that are constructed. I'm very interested to see how children would play on those things. And how they survive our cold climate, because I've only seen them in North and South Carolina. So it's something I've been intrigued by, but we need to learn.
I really like the circle drop off welcome point in the interior. I felt like it really gave a feeling of inclusiveness to the space. That it was like a little town in and of itself, you know, it was like a little theme park in and of itself, right? So that it's not just, it's something that you enter and that you experience as a whole, rather than just drive by on the street and maybe have the opportunity to stop sometime. But that, you know, when you go, the feeling is that, you know, you could create a feeling where you're entering another space completely. And I think there's simple things one can do in a design, such as, you know, having a kind of route inside that is like a drop-off point or the welcome point or something like that. And I felt that was foregrounded well or explored well or suggested in design.
I concur, I like that feature of the three. And I think, you know, accessibility to the park, on the park, is really still, you know, by having, and it gives you a lot more flexibility to do things creative, even if it's not everything that one sees, but provides several opportunities.
Now it's gonna agree with this.
Well, I think,
No, you're good. I just agree with everything you said. No, my main love of the access road wasn't not so much the drop off as it was the one-way street around, as far as keeping traffic flowing in the same direction, that keep running back and forth. I was the design where that drop off was, I feel like there's a big cement block right there right now. I don't know if we're gonna be on top of that by that point or not. So that was my concern with it, but I love that part of the design.
that access road would just be for like service trucks. So, when you kind of feel exactly that.
I think that's up for debate. Some folks have said, you know, if it was folks dropping off within the park, you know, one-way flow, that it might be more open, but I think in Susan's design, it was not paved, it was gravel, it was unimproved road, that would allow to build an interior.
She had said like that would be like a great place to put food trucks,
Oh, yeah, I think so.
you know, set up your vendors, or maybe like that.
You can see like different little parking areas along it, like off the first part, there's a playground on the first part, you have a parking area, but then the pickleball courts are on the southern end, you have a little spot over there.
The big point, Patrick?
Yep.
Yeah, to Patrick's point, that the thought that this would be two directional would be very troublesome. In a relatively congested urbanized park for the children and pedestrians. But a one-way feature all the way through might be constructible. But right there where that rotary is, are both the ammonia tank foundations, the oxygen foundations, and some of the purposes that are vertical. And so there's a lot of demolition to happen.
I like how you try to suggest the connections between the different elements. So, like thinking about the flow of, I think it was from design A, like venue, and then you have seating in front of the venue, and then you have vendors behind the seating, and then the playground was next to the vendors, and there was more picnic area, and there was a covered behind that. So it wasn't just let's place this where we can find a space for it, but like, what is the relationship between all these elements? Like, if someone is listening to some concert and their kids don't want to be listening but want to be playing, then the playground should be behind the seating area. And there's additional seating back there, more like table wise. So it allows for people to be in a space for different reasons, but still be there together. And I think that there's a power to know that there's other people in this space with you doing other things. I feel like that makes it a more like rich experience. Oh, I'm just here to, play on this playground, and all those people over there are like doing something different. You're not on top of each other, but you are in relation. And that feeling of being in relation, I think, is really key. And it's suggested in all the designs in terms of what's next to where. The only thing I would point out was I think a problem is putting any kind of performance venue or platform near the street because of noise. I could be convinced otherwise, but knowing how performance work is just, I think we should try to avoid that.
This orientation of that kind of a stage or setting really has to be looked at. Because you put it in the wrong direction, and you're drawing people out. It's not gonna be fun. And orientation to east, west, sun. All that stuff has to really be taken into consideration. The other thing that if the venue, let's say the pavilion is larger, than just a stadium event, you can utilize that as probably a solar array, as opposed to taking the square footage out of the footprint of the actual park. So there's a lot of things that are really good, but there are a lot of things we can tweak. And how much are we going to be able to really? Well,
The things I liked about it, most of them are keeping the noises down. And keeping the parking to the edges so it doesn't. Give the space so that people can flow. And it's not a big area, it's not on your mind today, but one sort of thing I question is being everything to everybody. Really think about advertising. I'd rather give more space to kids and play. Not have the dog areas to small, whatever, we can think about what the priorities are, but instead of trying to pack them. But I love the gradation from sort of paved towards to the bus development. I think the pavement is down.
Are there any elements that we need in this design or need? That you talked about before. That would drop the below file. Things about this part that we thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. That might actually draw people from surrounding areas and make this park unique to us.
Well, the history of the river itself, Michael, is, started that ball rolling last summer. Is that, with the clamming industry, that river spawning is like in front of it. And that being part of that draw, and actually can see what's going on in that river. And there's certain kinds of variants that are playing. That might be of interest.
I have sort of the question of who is it? Are we trying to do this? Unity.
Well,
Is it both or, to me, it's the community part.
initially.
And maybe we'll have events that draw. But I'd like to see it designed.
I think that will always be the priority of the community. I think also it's useful to think about what is happening in other parks and other towns. And so is there any one feature that actually we could have that would is not found in another park in another town. In that sense, would not only be serving the community, but be attracting people from elsewhere and say, oh, hey, I'm gonna take my family, I found a Saturday to go, let's do it now. Right. Yeah, right, so, and I think of, the outdoor performance space pavilion, would attract people just because their event might happen there. That would attract.
And the nature-based play, I mean, there's.
Well, that's the big thing,
Non-existent
that's,
everywhere. So that would be unique and good for kids.
yeah, that's a big question.
So to me, that's like the biggest. Yeah.
There's, to be very fair there, geographical channel is severe where it is, so that, yeah, they have, in the woods, kind of, just have the mud kitchens and, swings. I don't know if you did. You know, I don't think it's a safe thing. The children go well and they play around or something. But I think having those parents and all the areas and together.
Right, that combination is an attractive.
Unique features.
Susan mentioned when she left before is having the ice rink under a pavilion. And she had mentioned that she saw that, in I want to say, Saco or someplace recently, but Joan had mentioned not Joan. No. Cindy. Cindy had mentioned. It doesn't matter. Had mentioned that she had recently been to a pavilion that was like where they have their farmers market, but in the winter, it had just a little lip on it, and that's what they filled to. And then Marcus doesn't have to worry about a line.
I'm the guy that shovels.
Yeah.
You can see it right from 295.
Portland.
In Portland.
Yeah, it wasn't, I don't think it was that. She
No,
said it was
but I
a
mean-
smaller town, but it was really unique, and she thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, if we have to go all on the.
Yeah, it's pickleball in the summer and then ice skating in the winter,
Yeah.
under a pavilion.
Marcus, I'm curious what you thought about splitting the courts up. We originally had two tennis courts with pickleball
Yeah,
versus, I mean, I'd sort of like to.
So-
make it more compact, but what do
Yeah.
you thought?
so my original plan had two tennis courts that had four pickleball courts on it. That's gonna be the most cost effective way we can build them. The more pickleball grows, the more it kind of demands its own space. So I mean, if I had to pick between tennis or pickleball right now, people are knocking down my door all the time for pickleball courts, not so much for tennis. So I guess if there was a push, if the money was there to do both, great. If not, I would go back to combining them. Unless
Starting that way.
unless we really had a push to do solely, MRC just put in 8 indoor pickleball courts in their own building, to get them away from the towns, because there's so much draw.
Well, they're gonna do up to a tennis too.
Huh? Well, so it's same.
We also have a grant that we have to replace the tennis court, so we have to
Yeah.
at least replace what was that 80 grand.
Okay.
So there is that as the
Yeah.
condition of that funding.
But can't you lay out a tennis court as a two pickleball court? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you can put one pickleball court on each side.
Yes. But yeah, just to echo another unique feature, this is a longer term plan, but just how to integrate the historical dimension of the site. In a way that is not simply about signage. I think that there's a real opportunity here with, public art, maybe some kind of monument, memorial type. Aspect with the trails, with the natural and man-made features, such as the stone walls that run. So they can be integrated into the trails, and you could create a whole type of like historical experience, so like there's tennis happening here, but if you just sort of step back and look over there, you see this object that is going to connect you to something else further down the trail. And all of a sudden, this whole other dimension of the space, enters, your mind and your your feelings. So I think that's something that I'm primarily interested in and I would have to work on. But I think we're set up to be able to do that well with this space.
That's a question to throw out to everybody. One thing that struck me on the plans was. The idea of and I'd love to see a lot of. Ultimately that would be cheaper and better for people. Maybe might need somebody to cover the buildings. Just curious what people think about that. I feel like the more the meeting, the better.
You mean on the,
Just wherever we can plant them, clusters of trees for shade.
but on, not on the,
We can't do it on the can presumably. I don't know what that would involve, but it creates that Cindy. How do you? Can you? Trees somehow. No, we sort of got permission. Yes. the plant is- But just figure out where that is on the site. You can also pay education.
We had a little discussion about that with Homestead. And one of the things that came up was the rubbles that have been disposed around the perimeter of the foundation. Precludes simply backfilling planting. All that rubble needs to find a home elsewhere. Needs to be disposed of somehow, so that we can cap those edges with the growing substrate. And happily, whether you have an iPad or an AirPad, we're carrying at least 180 cubic yards. That box excavation from that from the jail system. The barrier treatment on 180 cubic yards probably gives you 4 feet better off to 0 planting beds all the way around that perimeter in many places. So those would be places where we could easily add material because we're going to have us. And plant trees and things.
I'd love to see. Special, where could you do it on this plan? So we can think about that instead of having. That's cool, but
Or maybe
I feel.
the initial stuff, they have to do.
Yeah, no, that's not-
And if they really in trees and stuff.
But yeah, I
And
know
then
that.
naturally you can be. Certainly, right.
I just don't have a sense. And what's the number?
I want to shift the conversation a little bit to, Cindy had talked about some do now activities. Things we could do right now in that space or with very little input and investment. To make people sort of start thinking about that space, realize that it is not just an abandoned lot, but there are plans, there are hopes. There are things in the works, right? Because grants take some time. This is likely going to be a phased project. And so what are some, did you have any ideas for things we might be able to think about doing in the next 6 months to a year to engage people with that spot?
Day. We, by then, hopefully have a somewhat more. We can have a big presentation. Maybe we don't know about any grants, but that's hopefully the cap is.
We have initial confirmation, we don't have final confirmation. We're waiting for the federal government, so.
I mean, maybe they should have, with you. Yes, we got this, and this is what concept is. But I'd like to see it sort of floating on the concept.
June 20.
That's fine.
I know we talked about maybe just doing some, to dress it up. And I think that would at least show the community that something is happening.
so I talked to Will about that, and so when there's no snow. This spring, they're gonna go through and they're gonna talk to the engineer about leveling off whatever's on that top. The top slab is leveling everything off. So what you gotta fill in and try to make it look like, hey, this is a flat surface, but that can maybe prepare it for like what she was saying. If we wanna use it and do the painting. That was an intriguing idea, really, the whole
Yeah,
painting of different areas.
Right.
Say, hey, this is our performance city.
yeah, and then what do you think about that? You know,
Yeah.
you imagine it elsewhere, come and be in the space and see where we suggest it might go. But in order for that to happen, you need a plan first.
You do.
That's the first.
Right.
And he had, they put that on their schedule.
You know, it's like,
Well, he's gonna chat with him. They work closely on the downtown. They're working anyway on a different project in town.
Okay.
So he can have that conversation, with the crews and figure out, what can and cannot, what they would like to see, what's not going, what can they do to help it look better, and what can they do that won't prohibit something in the future. They don't wanna do
Right.
something that.
Right.
But there's some things that are sticking up that we might be able to just cut off and. But he's gonna,
So, right, so the chalk or the paint could demarcate these components that Cindy's suggesting. Then the other open question is the nature play area, which everyone is very interested in. So you could try to prioritize clearing some of the fields around the Hofstas house or behind it. And this would be a question for Susan, which is like, what simple feature could you, a mound or something, I don't know, and just be like, someone will do some kids will do something with it, but it's basically just to spark the conversation of there's this whole other element that we want to introduce to this space called nature play. Here's one example. It might not be this, because one example, and then we just have some pictures of other things up. So people can begin to understand, oh, this is not simply about court. It's not simply about even a pavilion. There's all these other elements. But I think we really need an example of something.
Here's a question that I'm John from Billy. What is going to happen with the pump system? Because
It's voted by the select board to be demolished.
demolished, right? So
waiting
that-
on the grant.
the grants demolished. So that's going to create some additional space. Why don't we not simple then,
If we can't, the DEP said,
even with the hot system?
even with the hot,
That's not. Well,
they said no,
Both properties are.
7. We tried. I tried for years. I ask every time. I use that exact. word. And I'm normally very.
I thought that I was following up on your remark about shade. And I'm writing a grant right now for the National Wildlife Refuge in a seasonal shade structure. And it occurred to me along the way that one way we can include shade around the periphery of the courts. So you're not in a traffic area, you're not in recreation. We would have we can supplement the fence post. With polar tile and things. And they could be even place for seasons shade around the edges. So here's a feature we put up in, put up in, more they put down over there. And they call people to congregate off at the port, and on the way back. So our fence is actually, in this case, could be really good resource together.
So I think then to your answer to the last question, what are some easy? Oh, that was the question. Yeah, easy to know activities. I would say aim for Wall Road Day as the realization of the easy to know activity. I think that would be the biggest pay. And it gives us time.
The other thing is, I think we need markets to start incorporating that space, so like, he did this really cool thing last year, which was the Hot Wheels. Power Wheels, the Power Wheels race, Power Wheels race, but we did it at the school, so maybe that's something you can do down there. Because there's plenty of room, and we maybe like paint a track See, I'm trying to get that go-kart track there, so now it's just gonna be Power Wheel. But it's Power Wheel or, you know, somebody even mentioned just, is there enough room down there in an open field where there could be a dedicated like kite flying spot? Like, where, you know, parents take their kids and just go fly a kite, something like that. So those are things you could do. But I think we need to depend on you to come up with activities that, okay, I might put it here, but now think about when it's cleaned up, hey, I can use that space.
Okay, so, said a field that's not dedicated to kites, for people to pick up side or whatever.
Right down the area.
Yeah, the area behind the house.
There is a well back there that we need to have filled.
A what?
There is a well, an old well that we need to have filled before we encourage anyone to go behind Austin's house.
You just have to tell them.
Will knows about it. He just,
Right.
yeah, we just need to get on his.
Super related items, you know, everyone. There used to be a big barn that was part of the office house. It doesn't exist anymore, but there's foundation stones for the barn and there's quite a drop off there. So that would, once we start clearing the vegetation, I think we're going to reveal some things that might need to be addressed or cordoned off in some way for physical safety.
Bill is not an issue for us.
But I would also suggest, and this is again, for the question about how do we preserve, is there a way to preserve the imprint? The ghost of the hospice house, right? So because in my board, they talk about the importance of the connected farmhouse in this rural area of New England. And of course, there's tons of examples, but it's cool to have that one there for specific reasons that have to do with its own history. So is there a way to incorporate, even though it's not standing, to say there was once this, you know, to have an imprint be visible, right? I think there are ways to keep it, use it to conjure an idea of and a knowledge of Waldoboro that is harder to find in this concentrated area. And the other thing I wanted to say was that the topography of the entire lot is actually really interesting and it's impossible to see because of so much overgrowth. I don't know how we would do this other than volunteers or working with Will to start clearing select areas, because I think there's a lot of natural features that we could design around. Whether it's play areas or, you know, the pottery of the trail or a historical feature that we have no idea because there's just what's growing. So again, it's just an agenda item of like, how would we undertake that? It's probably gonna be a volunteer effort or some combination, but also it would have to be like, let's focus on this area now, you know, because it's closer, or because it's related to some other element.
Well, as long as we get to Will early enough in the season where that's something he can dedicate time to,
Okay.
when they have the time to dedicate, that would be perfect because you have the winter die off and now, you know.
Yeah,
going
no,
into-
it's great, yeah.
As I remember when Matt was. They. He was looking at the demolition of the houses house and talked about the foundation stone as being something somebody would want to make some money from. If they were doing the demolition, I don't know if that'll be an idea again. But there was also a possibility of removing all that, so it's.
And some of that was, I know that previous public works director said that there may be some things we were interested in keeping the foundation stone, so we'll.
It could be part of the replay too, if we want.
But
Yeah, right.
Yeah, foundation stones, those hold so much history. Do you know how much work it took?
Yeah.
To create and move those foundation stones? I don't think people have any conception, you know, now, some. Generally speaking.
Regarding the distance, the history of the process has, I've seen it in West Virginia and in Virginia, places out Jersey, where in the park they preserved some portion of foundation.
Yes.
The abutment. Even in our nature park, 5 meters plus for Ambassador Park, if you will, we had no mill seat and we preserved the riser structure that backed up the race, the mills. It's all gone, we burned, but we left that one piece. And we had a little fiberglass on there,
Yeah.
purpose. But yeah, those foundation stones can be actually slightly, a few of them can be slightly reassembled. There's one thing that real quick, using everything here.
In our last 5 minutes, we had, just want to move us on to thinking about engaging the community and the public in this. And we had mentioned doing something at Waldeboro Day as, you know, a reveal of this is still an active site that we are talking about monthly, and making active plans for, but other thoughts, other, you know, this is a park, we're talking a lot about children, we have not done a lot of outreach to children, or to parents of children. Are there things that we need to do there? Are there ideas that people have in terms of engagement, outreach, bringing more people into the conversation as we're in these planning stages before things get finalized?
Well, we did do a survey and we did gather a lot of feedback, and that feedback informed the creation of these designs. So they do feature elements that did not come from the committee, but actually came from the community. The next question would be, we want to use some version of these designs. Maybe it's one that kind of combines what we've been talking about, or two, I don't know. And ask for input again in some way. It would be nice to use these drawings as an invitation, because I believe they would excite.
Well, you've got a couple of things coming up. You've got people are going to be May coming in to the town office to pay their taxes. So that's a chance. I understand that's probably not when we want to grab people, but you also have an election in June. So that there'll be people coming to us. We'll have a captive audience is what I'm trying to say. And then, there's going to be events as it gets warmer at the school.
Yeah, so it's a question of what materials do we need to put together and how we actually packaging that interaction.
As a parent,
What would be useful for you to see?
I don't know, I'm still out of the loop of what's people are doing now, like QR codes, the other thing, I don't know, so every website that's interactive, I don't know.
well, we used the QR codes before. We did do that.
I could see narrowing it down to one conceptual plan, knowing that there's room to move it up, like they see, and sort of laid out like that, colorful. And then the Waldeboro Day, and actually try to bring it live with the people see it. In terms of getting feedback, I don't, the one thing I am still a little concerned about that I think we need to think. Here to address it, the parents and say, I'm never gonna want my kids to play on the. So I feel like we need to think about that piece. Something outside, again, I know we've got the things to say. But I still think it's been a lot. But I just think a simple plan and just try it. I almost feel like waiting until we know about this grant so we can say, yeah, it's grant. And that we're getting started for everybody. Presuming that comes for help. But give me a sense.
I know the Cindy that did the design for us. I know she picked us and did us a favor. Is there any world where we take these three designs, mush them together, nitpick what we like, don't like, adjust the things we need, send it back to her and have her clean it up for us? We have one design that presents the public.
That feels like a big ask, only because she did this as volunteer work, as part of a,
Just asking.
as part of a.
No, I agree. I was my
I-
thought. We
but-
could pursue what.
We could ask, we could ask her.
I like all three designs, and all three designs have things I
Right.
hate it.
Yeah.
If we could come up with some very specific asks, I don't have a problem with turning around and.
We do have the opportunity, not right now, but in our budget that we're gonna be discussing in 10 minutes. In the capital, there is a provision for funding for those parks. So we may have that opportunity to have, we could actually pay her
Or somebody.
to meld those three together.
Yeah,
So-
arguably that would be a good use of resources. I don't-
Well, we do have a matching component, so I'm just saying, because we are getting that grant, we have to plan that we're going to. Obviously, we think we're getting it, so we've got to make a match, so that would be a good use.
We also have Barbara who could do it. If you wanted to.
Right, but I would want to use the color scheme and the
Yeah,
images.
saying do it like this.
And Cindy's got it, I understand.
If she
That's
was
an option, yeah. But also echo what Jenna was saying that, not simply would it be nice to tie gathering feedback to an announcement of some major progress. But, if it wasn't tied to that, I do fear that people would be like, I think you asked me this before and like nothing's happened. And that might backfire. So, it's March, April, it's not that much time before Waldeboro Day. I would suggest that we kind of focus on having something at least on site by then, it's a new, consolidated image shared by then, a sign by then, just to kind of maybe keep that as our goal, because I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to happen to even realize all those things by end of June. And I think that it would have more of an impact anyways, if we did it that way, for feedback as well.
Sounds like a good action item coming out of here.
And AI is a suggestion from the back of the room.
That's true, just.
And I'm not an AI person,
It's true, actually.
but a lot of people are. And some of these people, they can do wonders with AI. Get some smart computer whiz and get all
It's
the,
true, actually, yeah.
actually,
everybody's
AI,
at Ruben.
Everybody looks at Ruben.
just a thought.
Yeah.
You're getting called out, Ruben.
All the, you got we looking. You're up. Good that there's certain features that we would like to see. I think for all of us. So maybe that's what we do. Grab. what we- 3, 4, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And put it into. Conceptual drawing, AI rendering, whatever. That there is something that people. Can see,
Is it worth?
we're not just doing this.
Yeah.
This drives me crazy.
For those, like I did my homework, it said but should we either just have a checklist, yes, no, and just put our templates? Or send comments for you to tabulate, what would be?
I think if you sent me comments to tabulate, what you think should stay, what we need to jettison. And then I can, compile those and send them back out. We can do some back and forth via email and then discuss it at our next meeting, so we can make progress between meetings.
That's fine. You're willing to help.
Yeah, that's what we.
So that this is productive, then, your point about disappointing people who said, we've been here before, what do you have? How do we be able to pass forward with DEP over the, implied serious amount of demolition?
Well, the demolition's not gonna be, approved, so we have to design around.
Right.
there.
So each of these plans, none of these plans, I don't think we could be given to the public unless we want to disappoint us. So we have to address, maybe having some real standard, that address the covenants and their implications.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention, there are a couple of things I'm pretty constantly going to get from those who are not, they're not big. Like that, the wastewater dosing chamber and the pumps. Well, there's a 2,000 gallon vault down, which is already impervious. And that feature, which is about 3.5 feet tall, covered by junipers, that could probably be demolished and get down in there. That's something we could probably expect in the first. Fingers crossed.
Excellent. Well, we are at time, so I'm, looking for a motion to close the meeting.
We'll go to the next meeting.
Next meeting is Monday, April. First Monday in April.
And will it be 5 again? Do we plan on?
It should budget, how long the budget?
We should be
No, I
done.
think we decided on 5 PM.
Yeah. If I can start there.
Yeah, 5 p.m. start. We should be fine,
April 6th.
April 6th.
Okay, so motion to adjourn?
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Great.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody, for not drinking the water or. And make sure you don't take any papers home with you.